This is TV 10 and 55 Focus, a program dealing with issues affecting everyone on Long Island and the tri-state area. Now your host, Richard Rose.
Hi, I'm Richard Rose, and welcome to Focus. Did you know there was an election this year? That's right. Tuesday, November 8th is another election. It's an off year. People say ho-hum, but is it ho-hum? Not for Long Island voters. And to help us understand that, we have with us, of course, Levy. He is the head of the National Center for Suburban Studies at Hofstra University and a frequent political analyst seen on television throughout this area and considered a political expert. You buy that, Larry? That sound good to
Well,
you?
as long as you don't say I'm a political scientist, because I work at a university.
That's right.
And there are political scientists and then there are political talking heads.
Do you consider yourself any of those?
Not a scientist.
Right. How about a political pundit?
Well, yeah, a political pundit, though. I never liked that word pundit.
It doesn't sound good.
It connotes somebody who doesn't do any research, doesn't do any reporting, and except for today, no, I'm joking, I like to make some phone calls before I go on a show, so at least I have some idea what's going on.
You know, and that's really what it's all about. Do you think people are paying attention to this election this year?
I think that there is a small, intense circle of people paying attention to this, but you're going to see an extraordinarily low turnout.
What does that say? You know, you have Occupy Wall Street over here pointing out all the ills of America and capitalism, and then yet time and time again and I've seen this in the 30 years I've been covering journalism, it's disappointing to see how few people care about the right to vote, which was bought with bloodshed.
Right. I can't disagree with you. You know, the local governments, even school districts, are responsible for spending an enormous percentage of your tax dollars. And you'll get school district elections with 5 and 6 and 7% turnout.
Unbelievable.
And you'll get an off year election like this one with maybe 25% turnout. But by the same token, people are very, very busy. And they have got a lot of calls on their attention. And right now they're in the middle of a recession. And you may say, well, that's more reason why they should pay attention. But the reality is they're consumed with their lives and their kids' or their parents' lives. And this campaign, particularly in Nassau County, where there's nobody at the top of the ticket, it's just a bunch of legislative races, it's hard to blame them if the lack of a lot of advertising, the lack of a lot of talk in the supermarket is going to drive people to the polls.
This is the least advertising I've ever seen, even for an off year. And that's a reflection of the economy as well, because people are not even donating as much to political parties.
That may be the case, yeah. Well, Steve Bellone in Suffolk, the Democrat running for Suffolk County Executive, has managed to raise a lot of money.
Yes, he has, and we'll talk about that in a minute, just to give people a sense of an overview. I mean, but basically, on Long Island, you have about 10 supervisors races that are being decided. Right. You have the main ticket, the marquee race, the Suffolk County Executive race between Angie Carpenter, the Republican, and Steve Levy, the Democrat. And you have
Steve Bellone.
Steve Bellone.
That's
I'm sorry.
A Freudian slip, Richard.
Replacing Steve Levy.
That's right.
Yes, so there you go, who's been both a Democrat and a Republican.
That's right.
And in both counties, you have the legislatures, every member of the legislature up for re-election. So that's basically your menu.
Right.
And so, but, I hear people say to me that it's the same old thing. Why should I bother to vote?
Well, that's an interesting point you make. There's the concept of disenfranchisement, where people kind of look at the political system or a particular election and say, what's in it for me, and what difference is my vote going to make anyway? That's kind of a dangerous attitude for a democracy, because it allows small groups of very energized people to hijack an election. And you may, if there's any upsets, and it doesn't look like there are going to be a lot of upsets this year, it has a feeling of a status quo election, but if there are any upsets, it'll be because in one election district or one town, there was a neighborhood up in arms about something, or a particular ideological group on a specific issue will come out, and because everyone else stays home, they can dominate the field. Yeah,
and as you said, you can hope for 25% of the people to come out, and even that number is usually quoted for registered voters. If you take in all the entire populace, the actual turnout is below that, below 25%.
Yes, this is 25% of the eligible voters, 18 and over, who register.
Because a lot of people don't even bother to go through the process of
registering. I haven't looked at those numbers.
I'm not even sure how.
I haven't looked at those numbers in a long time, but about 75 to 80% of eligible voters tend to register.
Right.
So but you're right. It's a difference.
So that might make it actually 20% of the entire potential populace that could be voting.
That's right. There'll be a difference in turnout, though, between Suffolk and Nassau, because, as we said earlier, Suffolk has at least a marquee race at the top of the ticket. People who are spending money on regional television, advertising in the major newspapers as well as in all the weeklies across the county. Nassau has 19 separate legislative races. Most of those races, the candidates aren't spending much, if anything.
Republicans have the edge there. And then in Suffolk, you've got 18 legislative races
and
where
Democrats
the Democrats have the
there.
edge. Okay, but let's talk about the main race, the marquee race, as you said. Steve Bellone, the Democrat, and Angie Carpenter, the Republican. She's the Suffolk County Treasurer. He's the Babylon Town Supervisor. So they both have some experience in government. And they're there to replace the outgoing county executive, who himself is mired in a lot of questions about why he's not running against Steve Levy.
Right, it's a whole other issue. We still don't know why Steve Levy, in the end, resigned. What was it that Tom Spoda had on him? What was the deal he was offered in exchange for not being indicted?
For the manner in which campaign funds were raised.
Right. Well, but we
don't even know how to phrase that because so little information.
I've always suspected that if Tom Spoda had the ability to indict Steve Levy with something that he thought would stick, he probably would have done it.
Well, what you see is both candidates sort of running away from him, though.
That's right. It's kind of fascinating. You know, you mentioned Steve Levy, he's a Republican, he was a Democrat. Neither side wants to be tarred with him right. In any way. And Steve, whether you like him or not, and I think he did a lot of people do a lot of good things as Suffolk County executive, but still has been very controversial. He's controversial in budgeting, what a lot of taxpayers like in terms of him being stingy, has alienated him with a lot of interest groups that have a lot of influence. Bellone doesn't want to be tarred with him for the time when Levy was a Democrat, and you could probably find pictures of them holding their hands up together. And Angie Carpenter doesn't want to be tarred, for his time, Levy's time as a Republican.
She was even kind of caught up in the whole controversy when she first wanted to run, and Levy was still the presumed Republican candidate.
Yeah,
she created kind of some distancing with the party powers, John J. Laval.
It's definitely a curious situation, but I think that's all it is. I don't believe that the man who is not on the ballot is having much of an impact on that race. I think that it's a non-factor in the minds of most voters. They're going to make their decision based either on what they think of Angie Carpenter or Steve Bellone, or, and this is another person who's not on the ballot who can have a major impact, what they think of Barack Obama and the National Democrats.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you there.
Big potential influence.
And so that's what we want to get into, what people will be deciding on Tuesday, November 8th. That's Election Day, if you didn't know it yet. And you'll have some time now to go investigate these races. And we'll start with Steve Bellone and Angie Carpenter for Suffolk County Executive with our guest, Larry Levy, when we return right here on Focus.
TV 10 and 55 Focus now continues.
And we're back with Lawrence Levy from the National Center for Suburban Studies at Hofstra University, known to us as Larry, of course. And as I said before we went to break, Steve Bellone, the Democrat, Babylon Town Supervisor, Angie Carpenter, the Republican, Suffolk County Treasurer. They both want Steve Levy's job. It's the big race, getting all the attention, if there is a lot of attention being focused at all this year on what's an off-year election. So what are the issues there between Bellone and Carpenter?
I think the issue is not anything specific. I think it's more of an image, a sensibility. They're both trying to be seen by voters as somebody who can be fiscally responsible, somebody who, again, whether you hated or loved Steve Levy, and he was a person who inspired great extremes, he at least projected the sense that he was in charge, that there was some adult supervision. And that's the bar initially that both of them need to get over. That's the comparison that people are going to have in their minds. But they also want to be seen, to distinguish themselves from Steve Levy, as being seen as reasonable, as being seen as sensible on some of the social issues that Steve got himself in trouble on.
But are they going to be forced by the fact that the county is in such a dire economic straits, just like Nassau now, with about $135 million shortfall projected? Are they going to find, if they even succeed to get this job, that they're not going to have to wind up doing the same thing that Steve says he's going to do, which is lots of layoffs and cutting government services?
There's I think it was Mario Cuomo said that there's the poetry of campaigning and the prose of government. I mean, this is an island Nassau is doing worse right now. Suffolk is on its way to having some real fiscal problems. Whoever wins is going to have to deal with a lot of red ink, and they're going to have to make some really, really tough decisions that may go against things that they campaigned about. And when a person campaigns, you have to remember that what you say may haunt you when it comes time to actually do. And that's going to be the danger here. They're all talking about not laying people off, not raising taxes. But if you're faced with whatever it turns out to be, $100, $200, $300 million deficit, how are you going to close that without at least doing something with revenues or doing something with spending?
Well, in fairness to them, it is hard for them to make decisions when they're not in control. But is it also because they don't want to put off potential county workers when they go to the polls?
Well, county workers are one group. Taxpayer groups are another. I think that they're just trying to make sure that their bases come out. That's number one. In a low turnout election, they want to make sure that the maximum number of loyal Democrats and loyal Republicans come out. And in Suffolk County, the split is fairly even. So that's task number one. And then it comes to persuading a relatively small number of what we call swing voters, moderates, may not be aligned to any party. And that's where they want to project a sense of strength, leadership, and an understanding of the fiscal situation. In other words, that these voters can imagine this person that they're going to pull the lever for as sitting in that chair and making those tough decisions.
Okay, so aside from a lot of the inside baseball that we always talk about, the person who's trying to figure out, well, what would be the difference if I vote for Balone or Carpenter?